I've always thought that brains kind of look like jellyfish or like weird squids, and I love painting them as if they are like their own kind of species or sentient creature without a body. I wanted to make something that shows two of them interacting, and I envisioned a circular composition with two brains like hugging or having a kind of intimate moment. I sketched everything out lightly with pencil to start. I outlined the sketch with light brown ink so it's more visible when I start painting and I don't forget where things are. I started blocking out colors. For most of my paintings, I stick to the same color palette, a mix of orange and crimson for midtones and Payne's gray and crimson for shadows. I always feel like my work never really starts to come together until the very end, so in the early stages of every painting, I always get so worried that it looks terrible and it won't turn out good. Fortunately, most of the time, everything ends up working out, but I do tend to stress out a lot in the beginning. At this point, I'm just trying to focus on overall shapes, picturing each brain as a misshapen sphere, which makes it easier to think about how to shade them. The individual wrinkles in each one will come later after I figured out the overall shading. Before getting too far on the brains, I wanted to block in colors for the background. I envisioned the brains floating in kind of a surreal looking sky, so I added a light wash of blue and then sketched in where I wanted the clouds to be. I didn't spend too long on the clouds at this point, but I started adding some of the shading with pink. With the basic overall forms of the brains figured out, I started to focus on shading the wrinkles on each one. I always like to flatten my paintings before getting into the really fine details. Even though I use really heavy watercolor paper, it does tend to get warped a bit as I paint. And so to flatten it, I first wet the back of my paper, sandwich it in between some paper towels, and weigh it down with heavy books. The next day, the paper is nice and flat. This works really well for heavy paper, but I haven't tested it out on lighter weight paper. I started adding outlines to the brains with a small detail brush. I began adding colored pencils to give the clouds more of a dreamy look. I layered in some yellow, purple, pink, and orange tones throughout. I layered in some soft blue for the sky and blended it into some of the background clouds to create atmospheric perspective. For the veins, I used a red colored pencil. Adding highlights is always my favorite part. I feel like highlights just add so much depth, and especially for more gross subject matter like this, it just makes everything look slimier and squishier. For a bit of extra depth, I added some blue to the shadows, not only to deepen them, but to add in some reflected light from the sky. I've been working on the painting so far in square format, but I did intend for it to be circular from the start, so I traced the backing of my frame onto the back of the painting and then started cutting it out into a circle. This part was super stressful and I worried that I was ruining the painting, but again, it ended up working out okay. I ordered this frame from Victorian Frame Company, which is a fantastic company if you're looking for unique or vintage style, high quality frames. At this point, I was so preoccupied with sending my painting off to the gallery that I completely forgot about filming any fancy aesthetic glamour shots, but I at least did manage to scan it and take some photos for the gallery. And so here's the finished piece. I am so happy with how this ended up turning out. This will be available at Nanny Goat Gallery's Wildcard show opening on August 15th in Petaluma, California. So if you're in the area, be sure to check it out, and I'll leave a link in the description if you want to look at the collection online. There's a lot of talented artists in the show, and I'm so honored to show my work alongside them. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching.